Send it in.
And welcome, everybody, to episode 15 of the Puckett Send It In podcast. If you were to ask, I think either of us a week ago, if we had to make a preview for Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, I think we both would have said you're crazy. But that's the situation we're in, as tonight at 8 o'clock, the Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers will be battling for Lord Stanley here in Sunrise. So I'm Jay Gibson, joined alongside my friend and co-host Alex Krutchik. And Alex, I was about ready to pull out the brooms for Game 4. And then, lo and behold, we're here. Not exactly how I thought this last week of Panthers hockey would go.
No, not at all. It not only did they lose 3 games in a row, but they looked pretty awful outside of 30 minutes in Game 5. They looked awful in Game 4, obviously. They looked lifeless in Game 6. Game 5, they looked lifeless for the first 30 minutes. They looked great in the last 30 minutes. So what is that, Jake? If I do the math real quick, that's 30 minutes of good hockey compared to 150 minutes of bad hockey over the last week. So it's different than last year. We keep hearing here in South Florida, like, the Heat blew a 3-0 lead last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, and then they wound up just winning Game 7. But the difference is that I don't remember the exact details of each game, but they weren't getting the shit kicked out of them every single game. Remember, it was a buzzer beater that they beat us on in Game 6. Like, the ball just bounced the wrong way for a little bit. This is they've just been getting their ass handed to them for 3 games. So I don't know.
The exception to that, I think, and we'll talk a bit more about it. Let's go game by game here real quick. Game 4, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time about it. That was just a no-show for the Panthers, and Edmonton took advantage of it, right? I'm not surprised. Obviously, the Oilers had their backs against the wall that they would come out as ferocious as they did. But again, it was highlighted by a bunch of errors done by the Florida Panthers, the takeaways, the breakaways. It ultimately led to Bobrovsky getting pulled in Game 4. And while it was definitely not a nice, there's sometimes a good and bad way to lose a game. That was definitely the worst way you could have lost Game 4, apart from someone getting injured, I guess. Thankfully, no one did. But still, Game 4 was bad, but you still felt good about the fact that Florida controlled their destiny, and the series was coming back to Sunrise, that they would likely finish it off. So I can look behind their performance in Game 4, just Game 4, because there was still a lot rolling for them. Alex, you there? Alex, you good, my man? Uh-oh. Alex, speak to me. It's your screen's kind of pixelating, and well, things could be going a lot better. Much like this series, but I think I'll go ahead and I didn't mean to do that, but Alex, if you can hear me, I don't know, maybe try reconnecting. Like do a quick disconnect or reconnect. Maybe that'll fix it. It does look like a connection issue because you're like stuck there, so maybe try that. Alex? Okay.
Yeah, it should be better.
Okay, perfect. Well, basically, talk to us about Game 4. What did you see?
No, Game 4 was just it started off with the short-handed goal to begin with, and then I don't know how much of a distraction it was for the Cup to be in the building and for a bunch of those players to be 1 game away from their first ever Stanley Cup victory.
Yeah.
What I do know is that they didn't look like it was their worst performance of the entire season. So to say that it didn't look like their style of game would be a huge understatement. Like, it didn't look like anyone's style of game. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if the San Jose Sharks played more than 3 games in a row like this year. Like, it was just really bad. There's nothing you can take from that game. Like, as bad as they've played the last 3 games, I think that's the one where I'm actually cool with just burning the tapes and never looking at it again. Because, again, even though I'm very disappointed in how they played the last 3 games, that game was so bad that it didn't resemble at all what the Panthers do, even when they lose. Like, it didn't even look like them. So I would just say nothing from what we saw that game matters at all.
Now, game 5, I thought, obviously, once again, Florida got off to a terrible start. But at one point in that game, it was 4-3, and Florida was knocking on the door in game 5. They were 1 goal away. Of course, Edmonton gets the empty netter at the end to raise it to a final score of 5-3. But the same problems we saw in game 4 translated to game 5, maybe not to that whole extent, but Bobrovsky didn't look his best. Edmonton continued with the breakaways into Florida's zone with only Bobrovsky left. Not to mention some silly penalties by Florida here and there. But maybe the biggest crime of games 4 and 5 were giving up back-to-back shorthanded goals, something that I think had never been done prior to now. So look, we knew their power play wasn't going to be amazing against a team with a very good penalty kill in Edmonton, but to be that sloppy in a man advantage and give Edmonton undeserved goals is actually crazy. And what can I say? It screwed over Florida in game 5.
Yeah, no, and it was one of the big reasons why head coach Paul Maurice switched Brandon Montour and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Brandon Montour has been the quarterback on that first power play unit pretty much all year since he returned back in November. They haven't touched that power play unit at all, the first power play unit, other than, when you get the Sam Bennett plays on the second power play unit. So, yeah, from what I recall, they haven't changed that first power play unit at all. This is the first time they've changed anything. Because remember, when they acquired Vladimir Tarasenko, they just put him in the second power play unit. Sam Bennett plays on that second power play unit, so when he gets injured, they just slot someone else in there. So they had Oliver Ekman-Larsson go in there for game 6. Actually, they had him in there in the last power play that they had in game 5, just to give them a different look. Because, yeah, Edmonton has killed, I believe, 45 of their 46 penalties this year. I'll have to look at the exact stat, but they're in the 95% range right now. 95 or 96% of all their penalties have been killed. I'm trying to see. Florida didn't have any power play goal last game, right? No. So if my math is correct, they're 1 for 19 on the power play.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, again, like I don't want to. This isn't any moral victory or anything like that, but Edmonton's been doing this to everybody. That doesn't change the fact that the Panthers' power play hasn't looked good against anyone this year, really. But it didn't look this bad. So I do want to give some credit to Edmonton. They've been doing this to everybody.
Mm-hmm. In those first 3 games, you saw some of their biggest players like Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nurse, Perry had struggled to find their footing, and in these last 3 games, they've sort of figured it out offensively, and it's going to be tough once again to stop them tonight. But we'll get to Game 7 in a minute. Game 6, I think the biggest storyline to take away was the fact that once again Florida started off sloppy, was down a 2-0 deficit. In the last 3 games, Florida was not the first team to score, and lo and behold, they had to claw their way back every single game. So hopefully we see the Panthers actually score first tonight in Game 7 to set the tone for the rest of the game. But anyway, the big problem that occurred in that game for Florida, and still a very controversial call, a lot of people are talking about it, was the removal of Barkov's goal to cut the lead from, I believe, 3-0 to 3-1 with an offsides that Edmonton challenged and were successful with. Now, it's tough, and a lot of people have talked about how it's the right call, but the wrong time. It's too narrow to call in that scenario. I don't know. Alex, I hope that you're not disconnected because it kind of looks like you are. Uh-oh. Oh, Alex disconnected, but just talking a bit more about what I had said. That offsides call, people from all over the NHL, players, former players, they were all talking about it. And I think the majority is that while on paper, oh, Alex might be here. Alex, read me.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, my has been going in and out all evening, so I'm on my phone's hotspot right now. We'll see if that works better.
Just talk a bit about the offsides on Barkov.
Yeah, the offsides. I saw an angle from up above that for some reason wasn't shown on the broadcast from what I remember, and it looked like he might have been offsides. You know, not to sound like a sore loser though, but I feel like if you have to parse down everything and zoom in to the exact inch and slow everything down to frame by frame, then I feel like the offsides really wasn't egregious enough to cheat the game. Like, I don't think that was it Reinhart was offsides? I don't think that Reinhart was offsides enough for that to really affect the play. I do hope that they revamp the replay system just because, yeah, he was offsides. They got it right. But also, like I said, if you're an inch over the line, I got to be honest, and if it takes like 5 minutes to review it and you can only tell that it's offsides by slowing everything down and zooming in as much as you can to the point where everything is pixelated, I don't think that it was enough to really affect the play.
Yeah, and then Florida, it doesn't get much better for the Panthers after they do eventually score a goal. I think who scored the goal in Game 6? It was Barkov, right? He did come back and get one on the board, I believe. But
yeah, it was Barkov in the third, early on in the third.
Yeah, it was ultimately not, again, a bad performance all around from the Panthers, and now here we are. I mean, just generally speaking here, the goal difference between Florida and Edmonton in games 4, 5, and 6. And again, at some point, the goals in game 4 just turned into stat padding for the Oilers because they were up by that much, and Stolarz had come in. But they have dropped 18 goals in the past 3 games. Florida has dropped 5. How, if you had to calculate it in a 0 to 100 percentage, how much of this would you blame on Bobrovsky? How much would you actually say that is Bobrovsky's fault in all this?
I would say, I had to put a number on it, I would say 10%, just because it would be nice if he could make a huge save. At the same time, you can't blame him for any of these opportunities. It's a whole lot of rushes, a whole lot of 2-on-1s or 2-on-0s. He's been left out to dry so often in this series. So I don't blame him necessarily, but it would really be nice if your Vezina finalist goalie, who you're paying a lot of money for, and I feel shitty saying this because he's gotten the Panthers out of so many rough spots these playoffs, but I would love it if he would just have one more game where he just makes a hard save. It would be really nice if just once this series he could have made a hard save. Now, and I feel bad saying that. Because
I get it.
Like I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but like there were a lot of times where Bob really saved the Panthers this postseason, but I just need one more from him.
One more. And now, generally talking about the Panthers' performance, I feel like one bright spot in this losing streak has been Barkov. He has looked as solid as he has been in games 1 through 3. Maybe not to an extent, but of all the players to be angry about, I don't think Barkov can be one of them. So who would you say has been the most disappointing player you've seen in this stretch? There are a few names. You know, you have players like Reinhart who have not stepped up to the occasion here in the Stanley Cup. You, of course, had Verhaeghe, who is quite literally being taken out in favor of Tarasenko in the first power play unit tonight. Who would you say has been the most disappointing player?
Yeah, it's both of those players was what I was going to say to you.
Okay, Reinhardt and Verhaeghe,
because,
yeah.
yeah, because Carter Verhaeghe scored a goal in game 1. He got an assist in game 6. That's really it from him. And again, he's another guy like Bob, where I feel bad saying this because he's saved the Panthers so many times over the last few years with his clutch playoff performances, where he's put the team on his back. But it would be really nice if he can do it just one more time, because again, he just hasn't done much since game 1. And yeah, he had an assist in game 6, but again, he's not really much of a facilitator. He'll get you an assist, but like, he's a scorer. He's a score first kind of guy, and he's not scoring.
Yeah.
And then I was going to say Sam Reinhart for the same reason. He scored and he got an assist in game 3. And that's pretty much it. Those two guys plus Anton Lundell, but I didn't expect too much out of him anyway. Those two guys plus Anton Lundell have the least amount of scoring opportunities out of the top 9. They have the least amount of expected goals. It's really disappointing from your two most raw goal scorers. The two guys were like, these guys are on the ice to score goals, and they're just not doing it. And don't even get me started on Reinhardt on the power play. But again, I kind of alluded to that before, where I can't be too mad because Edmonton's been doing this to everybody.
Maybe Verhaeghe will show up when the game, if the game goes to overtime and it's game 7 and he has a chance to put a series away. That's when Carter Verhaeghe turns into prime Wayne Gretzky and scores the game winner. I digress. It's a scary thought to think about that we've gotten to game 7. It's unfortunate as well, by the way. We had both predicted Cats in 6. I was genuinely hyped for game 6, knowing that the prophecy says that they were going to win that game. It did not happen. It's weird because Florida is last time I checked, Florida is a slight favorite to win tonight. But generally speaking, Alex, how much faith do you have in the Panthers to take care of business at home tonight? Like, realistically, taking away our heart and putting on our thinking caps, the Florida's backs are against the wall for the first time this playoff run. Could that play into their advantage? Because we technically haven't seen the best from Florida in the Stanley Cup Finals because, they haven't experienced a situation like this yet. Just what do you feel about how they're going into this?
I really don't know what to think, which is such a scary – that's what makes this the most scary, because you tell me to think with my brain and not my heart, but like for what we've seen the last 3 games, it's just not reminiscent at all of what we've seen. I guess in game 5 that looked similar to what we've seen from the Panthers this year. Even in a loss, they've looked like that before. But like I said before, I alluded to this before with game 4. Like, they had just straight up haven't looked like that this year. Think of the worst loss they've had this year, and they just didn't look like that. Like, it's not how the Panthers lose. So I really don't know what to think. Part of me thinks, and again, I'm not trying to speculate, I don't know anything. It's just from what I remember for other teams that have gone through the Stanley Cup Finals, even the Panthers last year. I wonder if there are guys that are playing with like broken bones and like torn muscles that they're just not telling us about, and they wind up telling us at the end of the series. I don't want to pin it on anyone in particular because, again, I don't actually know anything. I'm just using the context of the past where, like, I wonder if this team is just really, really injured and they're just playing through some stuff that maybe they shouldn't be playing through. I don't know. There's so many different intangibles that I keep telling myself about. I keep telling myself, well, it's really hard to win 4 in a row. That's why the Panthers didn't sweep. But also that's why maybe Edmonton won't win a 4th one in a row. I don't know. What I do think is that whoever scores first is going to win tonight. That's what I really think, because I think that not game to game, I don't think momentum has carried over from game to game in the series, but I do think momentum has carried over within the game, where Edmonton scores first in Edmonton, and then the wheels fall off. Same with the Panthers for the first 3 games. So I think that whoever scores tonight will just ride that momentum through the whole 60 minutes.
Talk a bit more about Edmonton. Obviously you have ESPN's favorite player, Connor McDavid, who has really stepped it up in these last few games, not to be outdone by his wingman, Draisaitl and Nurse and everybody. Who scares you the most? Aside, if it's McDavid, then it's an obvious answer. But who scares you the most about who can break out tonight and put this thing away from Edmonton's perspective?
I'm scared of getting goalied by Stuart Skinner. This is the kind of stuff that has been happening to the Panthers my entire life, where they get goalied by guys like
Alex? Are you good? You're going at maybe 10 frames or 2 frames a second.
He got past
Okay.
Vasilevsky. They got past Swayman.
Uh-oh. Okay, Alex, you there? You there?
Did you get all that?
Yes. It kind of broke.
Did you get all that?
Yeah, once you started talking about getting out Skinnered or out goalied by Skinner, it kind of broke up. So would you run that by me again?
Yeah, no, just I feel like this has been happening to the Panthers my entire life, where they get goalied by the guy that you don't expect to be goalied by. They beat the Dragon in Andrei Vasilevsky in round 1, then they got past Swayman, and then they got past Igor Shesterkin, and you think to yourself, well, thank God we got through those guys, and now we get to feast on Stuart Skinner. It's going to be a walk in the park for our offense. And now, of course, this is the guy that's giving us the most trouble so far.
So there's a lot of I think it's cool by the way, just to get a little sidetracked here, that we're actually doing a preview for this game from a Florida perspective, because who else is doing a preview for a Florida perspective? You go to ESPN, it's all Oilers, and there's just not a whole lot available. So regardless, Florida has both looked good and bad in front of their fans at Amerant Bank Arena. Just how big of an impact do you think it will make to be in this Game 7? Oh, and he got disconnected again. So I would, usually when I'm on the Pause Up podcast, we like to joke about FIU Wi-Fi, because FIU Wi-Fi sometimes is very questionable, but Alex is not at FIU. So not to mention he has another pod in 7 with Fish on First. This is a little worrying for good old Alex. But to go off of that, obviously Florida looked absolutely incredible in games 1 and 2 of this series at home here in Sunrise. Game 5, they did not look great. Just thinking about the fact that at the very least, there's so much stacked against Florida leading up to this Game 7, but at least one maybe silver lining is that they're at home. They're playing in front of their fans, and if they do score first, like Alex had alluded to, the atmosphere will be rocking to at least back them up. So it's tough to say. But at the end of the day, I feel like both teams are really hang on as I answer a text here from Alex. Wi-Fi, sometimes is very elusive. So, like I had mentioned earlier, Barkov has been a really good part of this Panthers lineup, game in and game out, even when things aren't going their way. But I want to see the very best I can see from Tkachuk, from Reinhart. Alex, you switched to your phone.
Yes, I did. So does this sound better?
It does sound better, actually.
Awesome.
So anyway, I was just saying that at the everything's going wrong for the Panthers leading up to Game 7, but at the very least, they're playing in front of their home fans at Amerant Bank Arena. How big of an impact do you think that'll be in a Game 7 scenario? Like you had mentioned, if Florida scores first, the crowd's going to be buzzing for the rest of the night. Just how big will, at the very least, getting to play at home will be for the Panthers tonight.
It won't hurt. It won't hurt. I really don't know, just because I've been saying this entire postseason that playing at home and playing on the road, it really doesn't matter, because the Panthers play so great on the road and they love playing on the road. And home ice advantage doesn't matter and all that. And now I really regret saying all that, because I'd love to say, oh, well, at least they're at home tonight. That's worth at least a goal. But I can't say that now without being a hypocrite. I do think that if the Panthers are going to win, I'll put it to you this way, Jake. I know this doesn't answer your question completely. I do think that because of the way the crowd is going to be, if the Panthers don't take advantage of how insane that crowd is going to be in the first, let's say, 15 minutes, I think that they're in for a rough night, because it's going to be buzzing. They've got Alanis Morissette singing the national anthem. I don't know exactly who that is, but I've heard her name and I know that she's a big deal. So other people will be excited. I want it to be Ariana Grande, Boca native, known Panthers fan, huge Panthers super fan.
She'll probably be at the game, at
I'm
the
sure
very
she
least.
will be. It's time that she puts in the work. You can't be a fan and then not go to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're out here doing our jobs. Why isn't she singing the national anthem? 2.5 minutes. I don't know. But also, they've got Roberto Luongo banging the drum. That's
cool.
going to be electric.
That's
going to be huge.
People online were saying, though, but the last time Luongo was in a Game 7 situation, he was in net for Vancouver, and they lost.
Yeah, they don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, yeah.
That's in the past.
Yeah.
But Game 7s in South Florida usually turn out pretty good. We had the Marlins winning in 1997 against the Cleveland baseball team, and then we had the Miami Heat win against the San Antonio Spurs in 2013. I didn't know until today that only 5 Heat players scored that night.
Yeah.
It was really just a Dwayne Wade and LeBron James masterclass.
That's all it had to be back in those days. That's all it really needed to be, and it was good enough. But now, obviously, we want to see the very best of players like Tkachuk and Reinhart and Verhaeghe tonight to back alongside what we've seen with players like Barkov and, surprisingly, Evan Rodriguez, and obviously help out Bobrovsky instead of leaving him in these tough one-on-one positions. If I see at any point a 1v1 breakaway, Edmonton charging at Bobrovsky tonight, I'm going to lose it, and I think the crowd's going to lose it too. Above anything else Florida needs to do tonight, don't let that happen, I think, is on the top of the list.
I will say this too, Jake. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but I know that their 5-on-5 game has been pretty good this series, the Panthers.
Yeah.
That's why they haven't really been changing the the forward lines too much. The 5-on-5 has been relatively fine. It's really the shorthanded goals and it's the power play goals.
Mm-hmm.
Their 5-on-5 has been relatively good, and especially, and I know this is a big if, it's kind of like saying, oh, if you take away all their goals, we would win. It's kind of on that level, what I'm about to say. If you can figure out their rush, and I know that's a big if when it comes to Edmonton, you're good. Man, like, all of their goals are either on special teams or it's on the rush. Like, I don't remember the last time this series that Edmonton has just scored on a 5-on-5 offensive zone time, pass the puck around a few times, and then shoot for the net. So, yeah, I'll freak out too if I see a one-on-one rush or a total breakaway towards Bob. But I know it's a lot to ask for, especially because it's the main way they've been scoring. But they've got to figure out the rush, dude.
For what it's worth, I know it's not worth anything. Paul Bissonnette predicted that the Panthers will win Game 7, 4-3. On an Oliver Ekman-Larsson overtime goal.
That would be nice. That would be a very nice redemption story after being cast away.
Whoever, by the way, screw him. I don't like the TNT crew, and I don't much like the ESPN crew for NHL games. It's not been fun watching the Stanley Cup Finals on ABC. Steve Levy, I think, is cool, but Subban and Messier, come on, man, they are so apologetically biased. Messier, I kind of get because he played with the Oilers. I think he won a chip there, but I don't know about PK and the commentators themselves. They get really hype when Edmonton does something cool, but as soon as Florida answers, it's all chill. Like this is just a regular season game. I digress. Getting a bit off topic here. Damn, I forgot. Oh no, getting sidetracked made me lose my
Paul
train of thought.
Bissonnette said that the Panthers were going to win. Last time I checked on the Hard Rock app, it's a pick'em game. Both teams are minus 110 to win tonight.
Okay, well
I
I think
haven't
that's
checked
fair.
it.
Not to mention the over/under has been 5.5 for like the last 3 or 4 games. That's just been the de facto over/under this whole time. The nerves are starting to kick in as we get closer and closer to this game.
I've turned down 3 watch parties tonight and counting because I don't want to be out and about. Like I just want to be home.
Mm-hmm.
I bought myself some dessert for tonight. I'm either going to eat it in celebration or I'm going to eat it to
in
cope.
agony. Okay, and I remember whoever wins, regardless of who wins or loses, there's going to be a lot of memes created bashing whoever loses. Because if Edmonton loses, they came all this way back just to lose the end. They're like the Celtics of last year in the Eastern Conference Final. And then again, if Florida loses, they'll forever known as the Atlanta Panthers or the Florida Falcons, however you want to say it. And
at least the Falcons got to get their heart broken all in the course of one night, as opposed to this, where it's like watching a very slow car crash over the course of a week.
Yes or no? If Florida does lose it, is it the worst joke in sports history?
Only because hockey is not as mainstream as football and basketball, I would say that the Panthers might catch a little bit of a break, but within the hockey circles, it would be the worst thing to ever happen.
I don't know if I can handle it. Obviously, a finals loss last year and then a reverse sweep this year, back-to-back L's. They would become like the Buffalo Bills of the National Hockey League, They just can't win that one game or, when it matters the most. So, all right. You mentioned Skinner, but offensively, who do you think, aside from McDavid, has the most riding on him tonight for in Edmonton's case?
Let's see. That's so hard because I know the boring answer is McDavid, but there's a reason that everyone says the same thing. He just walks into the offensive zone with no I forgot the word I was looking for, but basically just like he slices through the defense like it's no big deal at all. Mm-hmm. It's so easy for him. And like, God forbid you get him on a power play or on a breakaway, it's over. And Chris Knobloch, the head coach for Edmonton, has done a fantastic job of getting him on the ice whenever Barkov gets off the ice. Off the top of my head, I don't remember how good he was able to do that in Game 6, but I know that the few games before that, he was doing a fantastic job of that. So I'm going to be watching for that tonight and see how the Panthers adapt to that.
All right, some housewarming, I want to say stats, just notes about Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final, because a lot of people like them. I don't, but I digress. The last 3 Game 7s, I think the last 3, it could have been 4, I think 3 Game 7s in the Stanley Cup Final have been won by the road team, which isn't good. However, on the flip side, Paul Maurice is, I believe, 4-0 all time in Game 7s for teams that he has coached. So does either of those things really mean anything? Probably not, but it's just nice to point out as we get closer and closer.
Vladimir Tarasenko is 1-0 in Game 7s. He was with St. Louis back in 2019.
Yeah,
so he's got it.
And you
By
have
the
a
way,
player.
Sorry, Jake. Vladimir Tarasenko is leading the Panthers in high danger scoring chances and expected goals for this series. I wouldn't be surprised if he got a big goal.
You're calling a Tarasenko hat trick tonight to lift the
No, it
Panthers?
doesn't even have to be a hat trick. I'm gonna mirror what Paul Maurice said earlier in the postseason. He doesn't need a lot from him. He just needs one big goal per series, and he got the one big goal against New York in the clincher.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if he can do something tonight.
Alrighty then, Alex. I think we've reached that point where, I mean, we're still like 2 hours away, which sucks. But half of me just wants this to be over.
I'm really happy that it's all going to be over.
Yeah, that we can finally just sort of move on and look at other stuff like the draft. Look at the new logos and uniforms for the Ducks. The Kings have been already unveiled. They look pretty nice. The Ducks, to be determined. But I think they've been leaked already. It's like they're going back to their old, Mighty Ducks look, but with the modern day colors. I'm a fan. And then of course the Utah hockey team has their logos and uniform, which aren't bad for a team with no name. They don't look that bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, get a name. They pay people millions of dollars on these marketing and imaging teams to think of names, and they just can't think of a name.
And the logos. Fun fact: this Utah team is using the same marketing team that has designed the logo and uniforms for the Milwaukee Bucks, the current ones, as well as Inter Miami. So
they did a good job with those. They did a good job with Utah too. Just to be clear, they did a good job with Utah. Just they need a name. Get a name.
So let's predict a hockey game for one last time this season, Alex. Let's predict a hockey game. Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Who wins? Does it go to overtime? What's your score prediction? We'll go with you first, Alex.
I'm gonna say in some sick, twisted turn of fate, I think it's definitely going to overtime. I think the Edmonton Oilers win 4-3. Yeah, I think they win 4-3 in overtime.
Who gets the game winner in OT then?
I think it's going to be Connor McDavid. I think this guy.
Are you saying, okay, maybe you're saying that just to put a reverse curse on him, but.
No, I would never do that.
Okay. I think. Jesus, I can't believe we're finishing off a season of Puckett with you saying the other team's going to win the championship in OT. Anyway, I am going – oh, Jesus. I'm going to remain positive here. I'm already pissed off that they didn't win in 6 like I predicted, so I could have said I had a clean sweep in the playoffs predicting these series. I am going to say this game will not go to overtime and that the Florida Panthers will win by a score. It's going to be a crazy one. 6-4. 6-4. Both goalies don't look great, but the offensive just keep going and going and going. I'll say that the final goal will be scored by Tkachuk in an empty netter. An empty netter by Tkachuk will close out the game. So that's why it's 6-4. So it'll be 5-4 with minutes to go. Everyone's hearts are going to be going through the roof. But I think they'll do just enough to win this because, like you said, momentum doesn't carry from game to game, it seems. So, Florida could just wake up today and decide, you know what, we're going to be the greatest team that's ever played hockey in the history of hockey. And Edmonton could wake up and be like, you know what, I don't really feel like it. So, all righty then, Alex. It's scary. My stomach already feels a little bad. But that's okay. We'll power through it. Any final thoughts before Game 7 gets underway at like 8:20 or 25 or whatever the hell?
No, I have no thoughts. Actually, I have a lot of thoughts, but I can't. We'll be here for another hour.
Okay,
not all of them are Panthers related, but I'm just excited, man. I'm gonna have some dinner. I'm gonna have the Marlins on a smaller screen tonight as they take on the Kansas City Royals, the second biggest game in South Florida tonight. It's not in South Florida; it's in Kansas City.
What's the price difference? I know it's like $1,500 to get into the Sunrise game. How much is it to get into the Marlins?
It's $1,500, so I think the price difference is $14.99.
I know where I would go. I'm just kidding. It's in Sunrise. I'd love to be there, but yeah, the prices are the fact that there's so many tickets being sold as well, kind of disappointing, low key. But I mean, if they're being sold to other Panther fans that'll actually cheer and be loud, then by all means, go for it. If they'll be sold to Oilers fans, that'll suck. Well, you know what's going to be really triggering when Edmonton scores their first goal and they're going to cut to the mosh pit in Edmonton and they're going to be going ballistic.
Yeah.
When we don't really have anything like that down here in Florida, aside from, I guess, the watch parties, which charged $40. Alrighty, Alex. Before we wrap up, just want to say it was fun covering the first season of Panthers hockey. I hope our next episode will be our thoughts on the win, on them raising the cup. Who looked the best doing it? It would probably be Barkov. He's been wanting to do this for a while. We'll see what happens, Alex.
Yep.
Alrighty. Game starts at 8 o'clock by technicality. 8:25 will likely be the puck drop. It's on ABC. Panthers and Oilers, winner take all, Game 7. Whoever wins the Stanley Cup final. Go watch the game. And for one final time, let's go home, baby!